In the realm of leadership, divine destiny refers to the belief that certain leaders are chosen by a higher power to fulfill a specific purpose or mission. This concept, deeply rooted in religious traditions, posits that God orchestrates events according to divine will, selecting individuals to lead nations in alignment with divine plans. Introducing Donald Trump as a leader marked by divine destiny sets the stage for understanding his presidency as not merely a political occurrence, but as an ordained role within a larger divine narrative. The significance of this notion in relation to Donald Trump's presidency lies in framing his leadership beyond political strategy, suggesting it is part of a divine plan for America and, by extension, the world. For a Christian audience, this aligns Trump with figures from Scripture who were chosen by God to lead during pivotal moments. It transforms the narrative into one of faith and providence, inviting believers to see his presidency as a chapter in a God-guided story of redemption and purpose. Examples that could illustrate this point include the unprecedented peace agreements in the Middle East, such as the Abraham Accords, which some interpret as aligning with biblical prophecies about peace in the Holy Land. On a different note, Trump's appointment of conservative judges, especially in the Supreme Court, is seen by many as having long-lasting impacts on societal values and laws, reinforcing a vision of America that aligns more closely with traditional Christian values. Supporters of this idea often argue that Trump's outsider status and survival against political odds indicate a divine hand guiding him. They see his presidency as a bulwark against secularism, believing that his policies and approach to governance resonate with a God-ordained mission to protect Christian values. However, the notion of Trump being divinely chosen is not without its controversies. Critics argue that aligning any political leader with a divine mandate risks conflating religious belief with politics, potentially marginalizing those with differing views and undermining the secular principles of governance. This view of Trump's divine destiny influences the broader narrative by suggesting his presidency is essential for America's moral and spiritual leadership on the world stage. Thus, as the video concludes, the call to action emphasizes Trump as the singular hope for America's redemption, urging viewers to recognize and support what is framed as his God-given role in shaping the nation's future. The concept of divine intervention in politics, particularly the belief that a leader has been chosen by God, hinges on the idea that certain events or individuals are divinely ordained to fulfill a specific purpose. This perspective can be particularly resonant within certain Christian circles, where biblical narratives often showcase God selecting leaders to guide his people. This belief is significant when arguing that Donald Trump was chosen by God to be the President of the United States, suggesting that his leadership aligns with a divine plan for the nation. In the contemporary context, proponents of this view might point to events such as the Abraham Accords, agreements brokered under Trump's administration that sought to normalize relations between Israel and several Arab nations. Supporters often argue that Trump's role in these peace agreements signifies a divine favor, as peace in the Middle East is a recurrent theme in biblical prophecy. Another example frequently cited is Trump's appointment of conservative, pro-life judges to the Supreme Court, which aligns with evangelical Christian values regarding the sanctity of life. These actions are seen as fulfilling a higher moral and spiritual agenda, bolstering the claim of divine selection. Support for this idea comes from various religious leaders and public figures who have publicly declared Trump as an instrument of God's will, citing his policies and actions as evidence of God's hand at work. These endorsements can be persuasive in communities where religious authority is held in high regard. Nevertheless, this view is not without its challenges and controversies. Critics argue that attributing divine will to a political leader risks conflating religious belief with partisan politics, potentially alienating individuals who may differ in their religious interpretation. Moreover, historical misuse of such arguments to justify actions that contradict core Christian teachings about love, compassion, and humility poses a significant counterpoint. This belief in Trump's divine appointment influences broader aspects of the topic by emphasizing the notion that his presidency is a pivotal opportunity for the United States to realign with what some see as its God-given mission. It encourages fervent political activism among believers who consider voting and public support as part of a religious duty. Thus, framing Trump as America's only hope for redemption intertwines religious faith with national identity, urging the audience to take action through political engagement and support, such as liking and subscribing to the channel for more relevant insights. This approach not only bolsters the main argument, but also seeks to unify the audience under a shared spiritual and national mission. Setting the stage with a historical and biblical context is essential when crafting a narrative that Donald Trump has been chosen by God to be President of the United States. This concept involves drawing parallels between significant biblical figures chosen by God to lead and contemporary leaders, underscoring the belief that divine intervention plays a role in political leadership. Historically, figures in the Bible, such as King David and Cyrus the Great, have been perceived as chosen by God to fulfill specific purposes. King David, despite his flaws, was anointed by God to lead Israel, illustrating how divine selection can bring forth leaders who might not fit conventional expectations. Similarly, Cyrus, a Persian king, was seen as an instrument of God's will, even though he was not born an Israelite. These examples are significant because they demonstrate that divine choice does not follow human logic, but rather fulfills a greater plan. The significance of this point in relation to the main topic lies in positioning Trump's presidency within this framework of divine selection. This narrative suggests that just as these biblical figures were chosen for a purpose, so too is Trump, fulfilling a divine mandate to lead the nation through turbulent times. Recent world events, such as the Abraham Accords, can be seen as aligning with this belief. These accords, which sought peace between Israel and various Arab nations, echo the prophetic peace efforts attributed to leaders chosen by God. Supporters of this idea might argue that Trump's policies align with Christian values, including his stance on religious freedom and support for conservative judges. These viewpoints often come from a belief that Trump, despite personal imperfections, is a vessel for divine purposes, similar to flawed biblical leaders. However, this concept is not without controversy. Critics argue that using religious narratives to validate political leaders is subjective and dismisses the secular principles that define modern democracies. Moreover, some Christians resist politicizing their faith, emphasizing moral and ethical standards across any administration. This biblical and historical context not only legitimizes the notion of Trump as divinely chosen, but also influences other aspects of this narrative, such as interpreting global events as signs of fulfillment of prophecy. By framing Trump's presidency within this divine context, supporters may feel a heightened sense of duty to promote and defend his leadership as crucial for the nation's redemption. This is where the argument ties back to the strong call to action, urging believers to rally behind Trump as he is portrayed as the sole hope to restore America's standing and integrity in the world. To argue that Donald Trump has been chosen by God to be the President of the United States, we must first understand the concept of divine selection. This idea is rooted in the belief that certain individuals are preordained by a higher power to serve a specific purpose or fulfill a particular role in history. In the context of Donald Trump, many interpret his rise to political power as a manifestation of divine will, believing that God has a unique plan for America, with Trump serving as the chosen leader to guide the nation. The significance of this point is profound, as it not only elevates Trump's political role to a spiritual mission, but also reinforces the faith of his supporters, offering a sense of purpose and direction. By framing Trump's presidency as divinely appointed, his actions and policies are viewed not merely as political strategies, but as part of a larger spiritual battle for America's soul. Recent world events can be interpreted as supporting this belief. For instance, the Abraham Accords, which were brokered during Trump's presidency, represent a significant step towards peace in the Middle East, a region of immense biblical importance. Many believers see this as a fulfillment of prophetic visions of peace orchestrated by a leader chosen by God. Additionally, Trump's strong stance on religious freedom, defending the rights of Christians both domestically and internationally, resonates with those who view him as a defender of the faith, chosen to protect and promote Christian values in a secular world. Support for this idea comes from various religious leaders and evangelical Christians who see Trump's anti-establishment position as necessary to counteract what they perceive as moral decay in American politics. They argue that his unconventional style and policies are precisely why he's the right person at this critical moment in history. However, this notion also faces challenges and controversy. Critics argue that attributing divine selection to Trump's presidency risks oversimplifying complex political dynamics and undermines the secular nature of government. Moreover, Trump's actions and statements have sparked debate over whether they align with Christian teachings, leading some Christians to question the legitimacy of the divine selection argument. Ultimately, this belief connects to the main topic by presenting Trump as America's last hope for redemption on the world stage. By declaring him as divinely chosen, his presidency is cast as a pivotal moment in history, where America's adherence to or departure from Christian values will determine its future. Believers are encouraged to support him, viewing their political engagement as part of a higher divine plan.